Star Search is actually like 4 or 5 AI agents all in a trench coat. And we use this kind of multi-agent approach where these different large language model agents know about each other, can kind of talk to each other, and actually reference each other for different information that they know about. And then that way, they can use some of our existing services that we already have in our API via OpenAI's function calling, which we'll look at a little bit, to actually garner some of that information. So the first agent that a user query is actually going to hit is this agent that we call the preprocessor agent. And this agent is very, very important, primarily because in its toolkit, it knows about a few things. It can detect prompt injection attacks, and that's some fancy prompt engineering where we say, like, hey, here's the query, like, get ready, you're going to look at the user query. You need to know about, like, if it's going to be a prompt injection attack. Be very careful. So it can detect prompt injection attacks. It'll clean up the user's prompt a little bit, and then it can also correct for some spelling mistakes or some common little errors you might make, and it'll actually use Bing search to go and do that. So you might type in, like, hey, tell me about what's going on in PG vector, but maybe you spelled vector wrong. It'll just fix that for you, and that's the preprocessing agent. So it'll kind of tidy all that up into a nice, clean prompt that'll then hand off to the next agent that we call the manager. And the manager agent is very important and very special. It's kind of the central node in this whole thing. It'll look at the user's query and decide in its toolkit which of the other agents to go call. And it can do this in parallel. Like if you haven't looked at OpenAI's function calling stuff, it's just mind-blowing. It's incredible. So it can call these different agents in parallel. It can talk to the Bing search agent. It can call to the pull request agent or any of these other service agents that we've created or will create in the future. And it'll just kind of spread its arms of knowledge and other agents it can talk to. So in this example, let's say that it decided, we asked about some pull request or some information or something. It can call the pull request agent. It's going to ring it up. There it is. And the pull request agent will get this user query from the manager, open that up, and its toolkit, it'll have some additional things that it can do. So you can kind of see the spider legs of different information it can go out and do. So let's say that in this case, the pull request agent decides to perform a vector search and summarize that data on some pull requests. Now we already saw the embeddings that we created on a bunch of that content, and we'll see that other side of actually generating a bunch of that. So opens up that envelope. There's the provided query from the manager agent. And then we can actually go and do a vector search. So with that query, and anybody familiar with building RAG technologies, this will all seem very familiar to you. We're going to embed that query. Again, the embedding is going to be some numbers. And for anybody who loves math, this is the understanding in vector space and where, all this stuff is in relation. It's just a way for you to go and search the vectors you already have to get relevant and related content. So we again go back to PG vector where we've stored our vectors, our embeddings, and then we can do our nearest neighbor cosine similarity search, whatever you've decided in your instance what algorithm to use. So here, from the user query, we can get the nearest neighbor, which is this one piece here that we've pulled out. And then this is sort of how I like to think about prompt engineering very generally, is we have a preamble, we have some context, and then the base question we're sort of trying to answer. So we can slap in all that content, the summary, some of the metadata, all that stuff into the context, and then sort of feed that back into the OpenAI function calling loop. And inside of that, the OpenAI function calling loop will actually give back to the agent some of that relevant context, which then it can kind of bundle up really nicely and hand back up to our manager. The manager then looks at that, gets that information, and returns back to the user a context-aware answer. So that, in the 3 seconds it took for Brian to show that little demo, is all those agents, all that whole multi-agent architecture doing some really fancy retrieval augmented generation, but across some of these different AI agents.